The reason given by the sage is that he that would know the truth of anything, whatever, must first know himself aright. He means that he that does not know himself begins with an initial error, which falsifies all the knowledge he gains by his inquiries. From this error the self-knower is free, and hence he alone is competent to find the truth of the world or of the things in the world. The quality of the would-be knower is an inescapable element in the knowledge gained by him. It would be right knowledge only if the would-be knower were rightly equipped for the quest of true knowledge. This is the true explanation of the fact, though many might deny it, that science has failed. The scientist assumes that he does not need to know himself correctly. In any case, he starts on his inquiry into objective reality with certain notions about the egoic self that are wrong. But do we know ourselves? We think we do. The average man is very positive that he knows himself correctly, and it may not be possible for him to realize that he does not, even if he listens to a sage. For it requires a very advanced and greatly purified mind even to perceive and acknowledge the fact that we do not know ourselves, that those notions about ourselves that we have cherished all along are mistaken. The sages tell us that our notions of ourselves are a mixture of truth and error. Once a few followers of a faith which very vehemently condemns the use of idols came to the sage of Arunachala and started questioning him. Their aim was to obtain from him an admission that it is wrong to worship God in an idol. And their spokesman asked the sage, "Has God any form?" And Bhagavan the sage said in reply, "Who says that God has form?" Well, if God is formless, then is it not wrong to worship him in an idol? Let God alone. Tell me if you have a form or not. Well, yes, of course I have a form, as you see. What? Are you this body, which is about 3.5 cubits in height, dark in color, and mustached and bearded? Yes. Are you this in your dreamless sleep also? Of course, for on waking I find myself to be the same. Also, when the body dies? Yes. If so, why does not the body say to the people when they are preparing to take it away from burial, "No, you must not take me away. This house is mine, and I want to remain here"? Then at last the disputant realized his error and said, "I was wrong. I am not the body. I am the life that dwells in it." And then the sage explained, "Look here. Until now you quite seriously believe that this body is yourself. But now you see that you were wrong in this. Understand that this is the initial ignorance, out of which grows inevitably all the ignorance that enslaves men. So long as this primal ignorance remains, it does not matter much whether you regard God as with form or formless. But when this primal ignorance goes, then with it will go all the rest." The sage, we thus see, diagnoses the disease, bondage to desire and fears, as coming and due to ignorance of our true self, and the consequent false assumption that the body is the self. And this is confirmed by the observation that desire and fear arise because of the body. Most of us are no wiser than the disputant in this dialogue. We are all of us fully persuaded that the body which is so constantly in our thoughts, and which is the object of all our anxious care, is the self. But the previous dialogue shows also that in this belief we are wrong. In that dialogue, the disputant believed in the immortality of the self, and hence he could not but acknowledge that he had been mistaken. But there are the materialists and atheists who contend that there is no self other than the body. But when we have a sage for our instructor, the arguments of these people do not prevail with us, for the sage speaks with the authority of direct experience, and we are far more ready to believe him than those half-philosophers. But the sage does not say in so many words, "You must believe me, because I have first-hand knowledge of this fact." Instead, on the contrary, the sage seeks to persuade us by means of arguments based on our own experience. The full force of these arguments may possibly be difficult to realize until the whole of his revelation is mastered. We shall for the present be satisfied with a brief statement of them. In the first place, the self has a continuous existence in all the three states of being known to us, namely waking, dream, and deep sound sleep, while the body exists only in the first two and not in the third. This will not be quite convincing, especially to those whose minds are deeply entangled in materialistic ways of thinking. But even the materialists can see that there is a state, namely deep sleep, in which the self exists without the body. Another argument is that the self is the one indubitable reality, while the reality of all other things, including the body and even the mind, is in doubt. This argument will become understandable when we go through the chapter on the world. When we realize the full force of these arguments, we shall no more be troubled by the arguments of the materialists. But then one may ask, what about those devotees and philosophers who profess to know that the body is not the self, who cannot possibly believe that the body and the self are identical, being steadfast believers in the existence of a self distinct from the body? These maintain that the soul is an extremely subtle being who inhabits the body as one inhabits a house, using it for a time and leaving it afterwards to inhabit another body. Are they not, by their steadfastness in this belief, protected from this illusion? Are they also ignorant, like the disputant in the dialogue? It is true that they at first believe that by their belief they are raised to a level above the common people. But in due course they are disillusioned. They come to see that their knowledge is purely theoretical, not practical, and that they are in no way better than the rest. They find themselves still confounding the body, both gross and subtle, with the self, just as others do. If the body be short, they are short. If it be tall, they are tall. If it be fair-skinned, they are fair-skinned. If it be weak and diseased, they themselves are thus. And if it be improved and made healthy, they themselves are made so. In the same way, they treat the mind as the self. If the mind be alert or joyous or clear, or the opposite, they themselves are so. The bondage to desire and fear is not even less than before. It is perhaps even tighter than before, on account of the added elements of self-esteem.